rise for the pledge. Thank you and good evening. May we have a roll call, please? Ms. Griffin?
Here.
Megan Doyle, Andrew Fowler,
Here.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Here.
Holly Mulrennan,
Here.
Una Petrosky,
Ms. Petrosky is excused.
Betsy Ratner,
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Here.
Susan Glennon.
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda this evening is student reports. I believe foreign goes first. Do we have David Gaetano and Arzu Gezag?
Hello everyone. My name is Arzu Gazalog and I am here to represent Foreign High School. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of you all tonight. Unfortunately, David is currently working with the robotics team for an upcoming competition and cannot be here tonight. But nonetheless, we are so excited to share all that's been happening in our school recently with you. First, we will discuss some of our recent athletic successes. Recently, many of our winter athletes have been honored for their outstanding performances this past winter season. Senior Barry Held and I were recently named Foreign's SCC Scholar Athletes for the winter season for both our impressive athletic and academic leadership within our school community. We are so grateful to have been given this title and look forward to continuing our leadership into the spring season. Wrestler Kelly Aspris completed her wrestling season at the Wrestling State Open in New Haven with a first-place finish, making her the first girls wrestling state champion in all of Milford history. Her teammate Antonio Madero finished his matches with a 6th-place finish, earning both of them an all-state title. We congratulate them on this success. Also, in wrapping up winter sports, senior Bassett Idris from the indoor track team had the opportunity to compete at both Nike and New Balance indoor track nationals this past weekend. Competing in the 400-meter dash, Bassett placed 29th out of 43 runners with a time of 52.24 seconds. On Sunday, he ran an outstanding time of 51.93 seconds, which was good enough for a 22nd place out of 41 runners in the 400-meter dash. We're extremely proud of him, as well as look forward to seeing him continue into the outdoor track season. And speaking of spring sports, conditioning for spring sports such as outdoor track and field, girls and boys lacrosse, and softball has begun, and our athletes are excited for their season to start later this week. In terms of academics, a lot of exciting hands-on activities have recently been happening in the classroom. In the science department, students have been participating in labs of all kinds. AP Environmental Science students learned to test the effectiveness of oil-digesting bacteria to clean up an oil deposit, and have also become familiar with using a classroom-sized apparatus to treat wastewater. Similarly, anatomy and physiology students were able to participate in their first dissection of the year this past week. Students dissected the leg of a mink, identifying the patellar tendon and removing all of the soft tissue on the leg to identify different bone structures such as the femur and tibia. In social studies, students in ancient history class dived into the ancient record keeping of Mesopotamia and the origin of the alphabet. After learning about ancient record keeping, students created their own clay tablets using a word stylus. Many students decided to write their names or initials in the clay, and it was a very fun experience. In mathematics, students in pre-calculus classes have been examining the relationship between an angle and sine and cosine values using spaghetti. They measured appropriate lengths on the given unit circle using different pieces of spaghetti representing the y values on the graph. Moving to the English department, students in journalism have been hard at work, and the Main Street Mirror recently released a special edition of the newspaper, including 16 pages of student-written articles, ranging from sports and entertainment to more serious, informative topics. These same students were also able to learn from Donald Enge, editor of the CT Post, this past Thursday. Journalism 1 students got to ask questions and talk about photos, how to find stories, and complete interviews. This was an awesome and engaging experience for our journalism students. This past month, our students have been hard at work in the foreign community. Many of our students have been raising money for their class dances this month, with sophomore ring dance selling cookie dough and seniors hosting a range of fundraisers for their prom this May. Some of our students have also been participating in Yale research to address teen vaping. The foreign community is making an effort to reduce teen vaping, ensuring everyone has the resources they need to stay informed. Foreign's very own Amelia McGonigal recently won the School of Rock poster art contest. High school contestants were asked to create an original work of art in the media of their choosing that incorporated some musical elements in celebration of the opening of their new Milford location. We're so happy to see our school represented so well. In other news, this past week, our seniors were able to register to vote during common time, and there was a great turnout. This is just one way our student body shows their community involvement. In terms of clubs, our Giving Table Club has been hard at work for providing food for the American Legion's Polar Plunge that took place this past Saturday. It was an amazing event that raised over $10,000 for the Gary Sinise Foundation. All of the veterans raved about the soups. Our Key Club has been active in the community as well, helping to collect money for post-prom and volunteering for basketball games on the weekends, while our Drama Club has been working tirelessly to prepare for this year's show. Our student body also led a school-wide fundraiser in which students wore blue and yellow in support for Ukraine. They collected close to $700 and donated it to the Ukraine Red Cross. I would like to thank all of you, members of the board, for allowing me to share these amazing things our students are doing in the Foreign and MOPR communities with you. We really appreciate this time to speak on our school's behalf and look forward to our meeting next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arzu. Next, we have Jonathan Law, Jackson Waters, and Aiden King.
Thank you and good evening, board members. It is a pleasure to be with you once again for our monthly review. As always, I will begin tonight with some law-amazing news. Our Natural Helpers Club, 3 members were featured in a WTNH virtual town hall on February 24th. Alexa Derrick, Sarah Ahmed, and Juliana Aguilar shared their insights about the pandemic and how their mental health was affected by the events of the past 2 years. The Law Choir participated in an in-school field trip this past Friday, March 11th. They had the opportunity to join voices with foreign choir under the direction of Dr. Jamie Spillane, Director of Choral Activities at UConn, for a choral workshop to celebrate Music in Our Schools Month. We are excited for the upcoming Ring Banquet on March 18th. Students have already bought tickets and cannot wait for the events. We recently held a Law Nation Donation Day and raised over $1,000 for Live Free, a pediatric cancer foundation. For raising so much, we were able to celebrate Pi Day by pieing some of the members of our faculty. In academics, science teachers have been working to incorporate the use of technology during laboratory activities. In forensics, students are working with PCR machines to learn how investigators process DNA evidence. In physics, students are using sensors and graphical analysis software from Vernier to collect and analyze data related to forces, acceleration, and motion. And finally, the Student Help Desk continues to work to support technology difficulties. 2 students have been approved to do their senior internship with the IT department in Parsons. This is a great opportunity for students to become familiar with a potential future career in the IT field, which they've been doing so well with at law. And now Aiden with athletics.
In law sports action, Caden Simpson represented Jonathan Law at the New England Track Championships, as well as the New Balance Indoor Track Nationals, where she ran the 55-meter hurdles. Jonathan Law has 10 All-SEC and 3 All-State student athletes named so far this winter, with other sports still voting for their respective postseason honors. This winter season also saw many team honors, including girls basketball winning their division for the first time in school history, our gymnastics team finishing in 2nd place in the SEC Championship, and our boys indoor track team finishing 2nd in the Class M State Championship meet. Marissa Wargo represented Jonathan Law at the CIAC Girls Wrestling Championships and finished 5th overall. As we transition into spring sports, our teams are incredibly excited to get going. Now into school counseling in college and career. Course selection is well underway for the month of March. All students grades 9 to 11 are participating in one-on-one meetings with their school counselors to plan their next academic year. On March 23rd, all seniors will take part in the annual Senior University program. This virtual program aims to provide students with resources for the transition out of high school. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson and Aiden. Students, as always, if you'd like to head out for the evening, you're more than welcome to do so. Of course, you can stay and listen to us as well, but we won't be offended if you leave. Have a good night. We'll see you next month. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any members of the audience who would like to make public comment this evening? Seeing none, I'll dispense with the public comment notice, and we'll move on to Chair's report. Board members, just a note that the Jonathan Law High School stipends that were omitted from the packet were emailed to you all, so that you should have those. I attended the Board of Finance technical session on the budget last week with administration, and the board will be voting on Wednesday on our budget, and then the process moves to the Board of Aldermen. Do we have any liaison reports? Ms. Ratner?
for the Milford Prevention Council. There was a Narcan workshop for those that wanted to be trained, which I participated in, which was quite informative. And also to let everyone know that March is Gambling Awareness Month.
Thank you. I did not know that. Any other liaison reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, members of the Board of Education. And if I could take a moment of personal privilege to recognize that March is Board of Education Member Appreciation Month. And on behalf of all of Milford Public Schools, want to extend our appreciation to each and every one of you, board members, for the time that you put into your commitment, your leadership, in believing in the vision for all of our students and staff and making our community a better place for them. So thank you to each and every one of you during this month. Of course, we appreciate you year-round, but we want to be explicit about that this month, and there's just a little token of our appreciation on your desks. So thank you. I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Fedigan to talk a little bit about our instructional highlight on intentional play and executive function. I was listening to our high schoolers reporting and thought in my mind, wow, there's that end of the spectrum, and now we're going to hear about our littlest learners. So I just love how this board meeting is going already. So Dr. Fedigan?
Thank you. I was having that very same thought, Dr. Kataya, and we know that it all begins in the very beginning with our early childhood experiences. So tonight, Mrs. Glennon, members of the board, we are joined by Elizabeth Gaffney, Instructional Supervisor of Early Childhood, Mr. Sean Smith, Instructional Supervisor of Student Development and Wellness, and Mrs. Andrea Giannatasio, Instructional Supervisor of Pupil Personnel Services. And we're really eager to share with you an update from about just over a year ago. If you remember, December 2020, we shared with you a district study. I guess, wow, with the pandemic timing, it's been even a little more than a year. But we shared with you findings from a district study where we did an analysis of our work in the area of early childhood, and we identified some areas of strength, but also some very clear areas for our future growth. We have shared with you in the past that there is a real clear relationship in the research between play, children's play, and their development in other areas that are really critical to their future success, like their language development, their executive function, their academic skills certainly, their critical thinking, scientific thinking, and of course their social emotional development. So this evening we'll share an update with you about what we've done so far, and we'll highlight for you some exciting next steps for our work in this area. So I'm going to turn things over now to our team. I think Mr. Smith, you're going to lead us off. And as Mr. Smith is getting ready, I also want to note that we're joined by one of our early childhood teachers, Mrs. Diana Colazzo, sitting right behind me with our team. You'll hear tonight from her and a few of her colleagues on video, actually, and you'll be able to see our classrooms in action. Mr. Smith?
And I think there's one other teacher with us this evening. She snuck in late.
Marlene
Yes.
Sanchez. She did sneak in late. Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thanks, Dr. Fedigan. Good evening, board members. Thank you for having me here with you again. So I'm going to just review for you the learning that we did in December of 2020 around intentional play and executive function to kind of prime your brains to think about where we are right now and where we want to go next. So one of the first things that we talked about in December of 2020 was why play is so important. And this slide from the Academy of Pediatrics really says it well, that children use their creativity while developing their imagination, dexterity, and physical, cognitive, and emotional strength, and that play is really important to healthy brain development. You know, we think of play as just having fun, but it really has so many other benefits for children. So when I was in here in December, I talked to you about what intentional play was and what executive function is. And I just want to remind you about that. So we talked about the difference between intentional play and free play. Both of them having a lot of things in common, like kids are being creative, kids are having fun, they're being independent, they're making their own decisions, they're directing the play. The only difference here is that intentional play is lightly scaffolded by the teacher so that the learning is geared towards specific learning targets. That's the difference. And teachers do that through providing the right prompts, providing the right setting, and asking the right questions. Executive function we talked about is those skills that we all need on a regular basis that really help us to focus, to be organized, to complete tasks successfully. They're skills that are vital not only in education, but also in life. And we talked about our vision last December, and that was to introduce play or reintroduce play into Milford to our classrooms so that we created classrooms where kids were having fun and being creative, where kids were collaborating and planning, sharing, compromising, and resolving conflict, where children were organizing, attending, and self-regulating, and children were really learning important standards-based skills while having fun. That was our goal. We also shared with you how intentional play and executive function support the 3 pillars of Milford. The 3 pillars being the developmental relationships framework, HQI, and the vision of the learner. So this is a developmental relationships framework. And as you can imagine, implementing play in the classrooms really creates an environment, a student-centered environment, an authentic student-centered environment, where teachers are able to express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. And creating that child-centered, authentic student environment is where working with children around these skills really has deep, deep impact. This, I think you're familiar with. This is a model of our high-quality instruction, or HQI. And intentional play and executive function really lives in a lot of areas of this diagram. If I bring your attention to the top part of this diagram, you'll see the words intentional planning kind of going on a diagonal there. And that's really where the teacher brings to life the free play so that it's geared towards learning specific skills and learning specific goals. And it really takes a skilled engineer to accomplish those 2 tasks, to have children have fun and play while at the same time hitting those key target skills that we want kids to learn. From the student perspective, if you look at the bottom portion of this diagram, there's so many characteristics in there that students experience while they're engaged in play. If you look at words like inquiry and exploration and risk-taking and performance, authentic task. Is there any more authentic task for children than play? And students are engaged in demonstrating agency. They're making all the decisions. It's their game. And finally, vision of the learner. Intentional play lives here as well. So if you think about scholarship and citizenship, creativity and innovation and personal development, intentional play lives in all these areas. Think about the skills that you need around scholarship, learning content, and using your memory, communicating, compromising, problem solving, citizenship, sharing with others, creativity and innovation. Play is all about being creative and using your imagination. And personal development, those self-regulation skills so that when you're working with others, you can share freely. You know, there's that old saying, everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. There's some truth to that, and I think you see all of it in play. So I'm going to ask Dr. Fedigan just to introduce this slideshow.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So now we're going to provide you with a sneak peek to be able to see children at work, children engaged in play in several of our Milford Public Schools classrooms. And you will see both Diana and Marlene, 2 of our early childhood staff in the video, along with a few of their colleagues. And I think they'll be sharing with you parts of really the intentional planning, the intentionality that goes into setting up this kind of learning environment for our young people. And I think you'll be able to get into a little bit of their educator headspace for what goes, again, into setting up the classroom for these types of learning experiences.
Thanks, Dr. Fettigan.
Hi, I'm Liz Gaffney, and I'm so pleased to be with you today to talk about intentional play, what it is, how it works, and what role it plays in our children's lifelong learning. For this video, we are highlighting 5 features of intentional play to help you better understand and to represent our work in this area. Today we will look at play planning, executive functioning, oral language development, STEM and specials, and scenario development. All of these, plus more, are intentionally designed to give children ownership and confidence in their choices while giving them the flexibility to play as they wish. Meanwhile, our teachers are on hand to gently guide their play in order to incorporate specific learning elements. The best part? Our children are learning without even realizing it. It is truly magical. So let's take a look at how this magic unfolds in our classrooms.
We are very excited to be bringing play back into our curriculum, and I am very excited to be on the pilot committee that is helping to make that happen. One of the things that I have found to be most impactful with play is the planning process, and we're doing something right now called play planning. When my students meet with their partner to make a play plan, one of the first things that they do is they draw a picture of what their play is going to look like. And then as a team, they come up with a sentence to describe what this is going to look like. So this involves students coming up with some words and then counting out the words in that sentence. This has really helped their writing become stronger and a little bit more fluent even. From the play plans, later on in the day when the students get a chance to use them, they open those books again, and now they have to go back and read what they wrote, which is not always easy. But they're able to do that because they have the picture that they drew to help them. So once play starts, the play plan books are opened, and they kind of use that to guide what they do. And it's really kind of great to watch because sometimes students will change their minds when they're in their centers, and they'll refer back to their play plan and make adjustments, and you can see that reflected in their writing as well. It's very exciting. There's so many great things that come out of this, problem solving, conflict resolution. It's wonderful.
Oh, play is such a joyful time for children. It is their work. Play is a time for freedom and a time for children to practice their skills. It really develops their executive function. Executive function is things like their working memory, which we all need to work on. It is their cognitive flexibility. Maybe a center isn't open and they have to choose a second center, plan B or plan C. They might have to not be able to play with a friend, or maybe a toy is not available. And they have to be flexible and cope with that. I'm so happy that Milford is focusing on play so much more. Play is fostering much more independence and risk-taking and problem-solving, which is something children have needed for all time. It is important that they have this freedom and time to have autonomy and their own agency. So much of a school day is thrust upon them. They ride the bus, there's a time, there's a thing to do, a place, there's a skill to work on. And during play, they get to practice those skills, and a lot of them are social and emotional, and a lot of them are cognitive, and they work on the executive functions. Play is children's work. It's a wonderful experience, and I invite everybody in to see it.
So within the 6 to 8 week theme that we've been working on with Antarctica and leading into ships, we've had multiple opportunities as teachers to introduce our learning. So through oral language, we're introducing vocabulary, we're introducing hands-on activities, we're introducing songs. So one example of how we do this is through a morning message. And we do a morning message every day where it starts with some drawing. So I will draw figures, shapes, and the students will call out what they think it is.
The stern is the, what part of the boat? The back. So this is the stern.
We are currently working on an Antarctica theme, and what was really exciting was it started learning about penguins and icebergs and glaciers, and the students took their own agency. And they showed a huge interest in boats and how can you get from the United States to Antarctica. So we started looking into boats, started looking into icebreakers and other ships.
Icebreaker! Icebreaker!
We've been doing our intentional play out on the playground. So we've been pretending that the playscape is a boat. So students will take on roles. So yesterday, without any prompting, I'm watching the students during recess, and a group of 5 students are playing ship. And the students were so excited about their learning that they continued this game during recess.
Preschool's learning about concepts and skills through play. The kids learn the best when they're playing in a natural environment, in a natural setting. So when we go to our specialists and when we go to our STEM class, if we can incorporate play into the learning, the children do so much better. When they get into the STEM room and she asks them questions about structures and what an engineer and what a scientist is, they already have that foundation and they're able to then incorporate it into the STEM class or into PE or library or art. And it's amazing to see the growth in the children as they learn through play.
What I want you to create is a big, big structure or building so that this dinosaur can sit on top of that building without hanging up. And I don't want you to just create a very small structure. I want you to build the tallest one that you can without falling over.
Our preschools are a language-based program, so we're constantly giving the children language and ways to ask questions and ways to respond to questions more appropriately. So that way, again, when they get into different areas, they're able to ask the questions, they're able to answer questions because they're not just answering yes and no. They're learning to expand their vocabulary, they're learning to expand just listening skills. And for example, when we went into the STEM class today and our STEM teacher, Ms. Cragen, asked about scientists and engineers and structure, those vocabulary words were already introduced previously to the children, and they just needed to recall those words and what their meanings were and how it pertains to science and engineering. But they are, again, it's that foundation we're giving them so that they feel successful and they enjoy the learning and it's fun for them, and it just makes it a more positive experience overall.
So one part of intentional play is play scenarios, and they're really fun. It gives the students an authentic experience, a way to learn concepts and really dig deep into their learning through play. This is my 3rd scenario now with this class. We started with our weather station. We went on to a big Y grocery store, and now here we are at the racetrack. We begin our scenarios with brainstorming with the children, and they really come up with the different roles that should be in the scenario. With our racetrack, we have car drivers, mechanics, people that will be working at the snack stand, people that we will be working in the pit crew, the audience, person that waves the flag. So they came up with all of that. We built a little background experience through literature and through some virtual field trips to a racetrack and to a mechanic shop and different things like that, car dealership. And then we started thinking about what roles would be in there, and the children, they'll choose the role for the scenario. Right now we're just starting, so our two roles are the salesperson and the customer. And they'll tell me in a complete sentence, I want to be a customer. So they'll put their little tag on, and then they'll take on that role. And they'll develop their vocabulary, they'll problem solve with other people in the scenario. So this is part of our scenario. We have our car dealership. We have so far 2 race cars on sale here. The students got together in groups and they decided what colors to use for the cars. They decided what number. This car is car number 100. They decided to put a lightning bolt on the side. This group of friends, they decided they wanted to make really cool tires, so they cut out some triangles for their tires. And they wanted a spoiler on the back. This one added a little steering wheel inside. So the salesperson, the role of the salesperson will be to tell the customer, the other role, what they have for sale here at the car dealership. The features of the car, they'll tell them how much money it is. So far we have a gas pump in there. The children, we looked at some pictures of gas pumps. The families know that we're doing this scenario, so when they go to the gas station, they're looking to see what exactly is on a gas pump. You know, it just keeps building and building and building. A lot of fun.
So we thought that our teachers and our students could really show you guys where the vision has come thus far from December 2020 when Dr. Fedigan and I shared what our initial thoughts and plans were to now. And a person who we have to thank for a lot of that work is Liz Gaffney, our Director of Early Childhood Education. Liz has really brought that vision to life. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz now.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone. This was perfect timing to do this highlight for me. I'm here a year, and it gave me an opportunity to really reflect on how far we've come in a year when it comes to intentional play. Intentional play is a passion for me, as is early childhood. So my job now is to take you from where we're going, what we've done since I arrived, and where we're headed. So last spring into summer, I was lucky enough to gather a group of preschool and kindergarten teachers together, and we started working on developing play scenarios for our intentional play. These scenarios incorporate the Connecticut L's and the Connecticut Common Core standards into play-based learning. So we had mathematics, we had literature, we had science and social studies all wrapped into one. Currently, our preschool and kindergarten teachers are using these scenarios in the classroom, kind of like trying them out, piloting them, and then we're going back and tweaking them to make them fit our Milford schools even more. We're also in the process of continuing our communication of our fantastic program of intentional play out to the community. In the fall, Dr. Kutaya did a great Milford Super News about intentional play that I think really brought home our work and what we're starting out to do. We also gathered a group of preschool and kindergarten teachers to start looking at our classrooms and how we could develop a classroom environment that would be welcoming and allow play to really take place. So these teachers came together and started researching what they felt were the best products to have in our classrooms. And we are currently hoping to have a model classroom at Pumpkin Delight by the end of this year for kindergarten so that we can see those materials in person. Teachers can interact with them and give us more feedback. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed is we started implementing a few really high impact executive functioning strategies. I think executive functioning is not always thought about as how important it is to child development and adult development. We are giving children the opportunity to really start planning for themselves, to organize, to start to think about their end product and reflect on what they're doing on a daily basis. One of the things that really makes me happy is I have an amazing pilot group of teachers that have been doing this work, but teachers who are not in the pilot have been reaching out to me to come into their classrooms to model everything that we're doing because they're so excited. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Also back last spring, we started a guiding coalition of teachers, administrators, to start thinking about what our vision is for for our intentional play. We are lucky enough to work with E.A. Aschenbrenner from EastCon, who is their intentional play consultant. And she works with our group as well, helping guiding us in our development of our vision, sharing her own expertise, and just infusing her love of intentional play into our group. We have also started to develop professional learning. Actually, I should say, sorry about that. August, we had professional learning for our district administrators so that they could understand what was going on in the preschool and kindergarten classrooms. And they are coming back, I think, in May to have another round of professional learning. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. Our 9 preschool and our 9 kindergarten classrooms that have been implementing play this year. They have had professional learning throughout the school year, and we are planning into the future what our professional learning will look like. They are continuing to work with E.A. Aschenbrenner, and she has come in and done coaching sessions with our teachers. Teachers will decide what they want to model for her. She gives them real-time feedback. They have an opportunity to ask questions. I go in with her, I get feedback, and building leaders have come in as well. Thanks to your generosity, we're buying the supportive materials necessary for play. And actually, probably the best part of my job, and you can ask any of my instructional supervisors, is the days I get to go in and model for the teachers and play with the kids and be a part of a classroom setting. And I do that as frequently as possible. So our next steps. Thank you, because in the fall, all of our kindergarten classrooms will be implementing play. We will have professional learning for all our preschool and kindergarten classrooms. We are having great conversations around what the learning schedule should be for early childhood to ensure that we have adequate time for play and that children can really dive deep into their interests, and we as facilitators of their learning can guide them the way they want to go. We are always communicating our vision for early childhood and learning, and we are updating the classroom environment. So as I said earlier, we will have hopefully a model classroom for you to come visit and give your feedback. One of the last things, and it's not a last thing, but it's something that's really important to me, is the collaboration that we are hoping to start with the community preschools. ultimately, all our community preschools lead into Milford Public Schools kindergarten. And we need to have a strong relationship with the preschools so that we work together to ensure that our children all have the same wonderful start in life. And I know that preschools in the community play such an important role in our children's lives, so I'm looking forward to that work as well. We added a couple of pictures of what we're hoping our classrooms will look like, minus the carpeting in this one. Just so you can have an idea of where we're headed for. Now I'm going to ask Andrea Giannatasio to come join me, sorry.
So we're happy to share that through EA and the LEGO Foundation that we received a grant for $10,000 in which we will be utilizing to support our community. And one area is the Bethel Homeless Shelter. We will be designing a family play area with them, as well as we're going to be creating take-home toy bins or totes for all the children that are in the shelter, and they get to take it with them when they leave. We had the pleasure, EA, Liz and I went to the shelter and did a tour with Jennifer Paradis, and we'll be working in collaboration with her on that project. We will also be doing some Milford Preschool providers trainings, like Liz mentioned, and having them come in and being able to ease that transition between community-based programs and the Milford Public Schools kindergarten classrooms. And finally, we'll be looking to some parent universities and providing some resources and offerings to parents. And once again, going back to what Liz said, giving some of those high-impact executive functioning tools and talking about intentional play and how that promotes child development.
So I want to thank our teachers for coming out tonight in support. And I would have to say, we have phenomenal preschool, kindergarten teachers, and it's a pleasure to work with them. And thank you for giving your children the opportunity to love learning and to learn at a young age. That's how life is, to love what you do, and if it doesn't become work. So thank you. Questions?
Any questions from the board, Ms. Glennon?
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation. This is probably nothing that we've done excites me more than this. So in all my time on the board, I've been waiting for this for a long, long, long time. Board members, Ms. Wolf-Boynton.
So thank you for that presentation. This is super exciting. I love everything about your presentation. I am thrilled with the community partnerships. That's absolutely what we should be doing. I just have one question. Could you just expand on the last slide, consideration for learning schedules, what you were talking about there?
Sure, absolutely. So in an early childhood setting, time is crucial. So when we talk about the learning schedule, working with building leaderships to ensure that teachers have the opportunity to have a chunk of time. For example, in preschool, ideally play would morph into an hour of time a day. So making sure that like specialists don't interact with that time, because the more transitions you have, the more difficult it is for kids. So we want to try to get them that time so that they can delve into their learning. I know one classroom, I think with Diana's, when I was visiting one day, it was a Friday, she doesn't have specials, and she said to me it was crazy because she had started a unit on animals, and the kids just did not want to stop. And so what became a half an hour became an hour. That's, we want to give them that opportunity to own their learning and to go with what they're feeling.
Ms. Ratner?
That was outstanding. I want to go back to kindergarten, preschool. The essence of covering the gambit of all the learning at that age gives me goosebumps, and I'm thrilled that Milford is having the opportunity to do it. The community outreach is outstanding, and I love that you're working with the Bethel Shelter with Jennifer. I'm not quite sure how you fit that into the schedule because you're using, I assume, the families that are staying there at the shelter, and your staff or you yourself, Ms. Gaffney, go out there?
So currently what we're doing is working with Jennifer right now to kind of design, they have a family area, a common area.
I volunteer there, so I know the space.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we're working with them to design it, to redesign it so that makes it more play-friendly and provide the materials for play. And then also having replenishment of materials in that area. And then our idea was, actually I'm going to say it was Andrea's idea, and it was phenomenal, was to have to-go buckets. So when a family gets placed and they have a place to go, the children will get a bucket filled with materials to take with them so they can start playing as soon as they walk over the threshold of the new house.
Super. If I could piggyback that, and thank you. The library, the FOML, with families, wait a minute, yeah, what is it? Friends of Milford Library.
Okay.
They have monthly kits for children and families. They're artsy kinds of things with instructional. It's more executive functioning. I'm wondering if you want to possibly send somebody to one of their meetings, actually the 27th of this month. It's a Sunday at 2 o'clock. They have their annual meeting. Only because it might be a nice idea to connect with them too, since you're doing such wonderful community outreach to the other preschools.
I would love to do that. And I was talking to Dr. Katai and Dr. Fettigan about this past couple days, and it's on me right now, and I'll own this because it's been a little overwhelming the past year, getting more out into community providers and becoming friends with them, because it's hard, and I know I am replacing an institution in Peggy Kelly, so it's kind of like, I'm trying to get my name out there too, but definitely I would love to do that, because it's all about making those community connections and finding the kids that we might be missing so that we can bring them all together.
Super. And Suzanne Thomas in
Yes,
the Children's
fantastic.
Department would be a good connection too.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Excuse me. I'm really excited about this. This was the first thing that I advocated for on the board 5 years ago, and I know Ms. Glennon's been advocating for it probably even longer, so we're both really excited about it, not to put words in her mouth, although she already said that. I understand Milford's probably not the only district in the state doing this. Are we interfacing with other districts to understand what they're doing, what's been successful for them, and taking that into account as we're developing these programs?
Absolutely. So, in all honesty, my history, if I can share a little bit of it, when I was a New Haven Head Start preschool teacher, I did this program in New Haven. So I have New Haven connections. When I taught in New Britain, I was an instructional coach, and this was my job, was to bring intentional play into the preschools and the kindergarten classrooms. There is, out of East Con, there's a coaches meeting that happens every month that I'm a part of, so I work with that group as well. So yes, we have constant give and take. Enfield, Manchester, Middletown, I'm in touch with all of those people, all those school systems, and I have contacts and friends within them that are all doing intentional play.
That's great. Do you have a sense of roughly, how many districts are doing this type of work?
From what at least 10 that I know of.
Okay, so that's a pretty small number. So Milford's sort of on the leading edge of this, which is great.
Definitely.
It seems as though this could be something that, if, I hate to use the word promoted, but if promoted properly, could drive people to move to Milford. Because people are looking for this type of visionary program for their kids, and getting back to play and intentional play. So I hope that with the restructuring of the IT department, we're going to be able to spend some time promoting it and developing, just like these videos. I mean, this video was really great. It was long, certainly, but it was great for us to see. So maybe not a promotional video, but something along those lines. That can be pushed out by City Hall, that can be pushed out by other organizations in Milford to promote what we're doing. I think, I know for myself, if I was thinking about having kids now, I would absolutely consider Milford if I saw something like this happening.
And I would say, so based on my phone calls I get, you're really correct, because families will ask, what's your instructional model? What are your preschools? What are your kindergartens like? And so I get to share this great work that we're doing. So it is exciting, and families do want it because we want our kids to be happy. We want them to be successful. We want them to, as I said before, love learning, and it starts with those first steps. It starts when you want to come to school at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and it just continues on. Sorry.
And I would just add on to Mr. DeYoung, I would say that Milford is on the cutting edge, and as a Milford Public Schools parent of middle schoolers and high schoolers, I too wish my children were younger and I could put them into a kindergarten classroom. But you should also know that Ms. Gaffney and I are also on a very small committee, so not only are we ahead and we'll continue to stay ahead and work with our colleagues throughout the state, but we're working on a small committee with Andrea Brunell from the State Department of Education, Office of Early Childhood, to really talk about how to lead for this work and how to lead for high quality instruction in a way that's developmentally appropriate and focusing on intentional play for our young people. And I tell you this because I'm sure when this happens late, it was supposed to happen in March, but because of the pandemic, it's going to be later in the spring. This work that we're doing with Andrea and just a few colleagues from around the state, I'm sure we'll be sharing that with you in an upcoming Board of Ed update.
That's great. I'm really grateful that you pushed through the pandemic and got this started, because we could have put this off 2 or 3 years because of the pandemic, but we didn't. So it's a testament to all of you and the hard work you put in. So thank you so much.
It's a testament to them. I'm the newcomer. I just get to do the fun part. They did the hard stuff.
Just to piggyback off of Mr. DeYoung's comment, in just thinking back over my time on the board and some of the work that the board has done, it was all, a lot of it, well, I wouldn't say all, it was a lot of it was centered on middle school and high school, and the hands-on, for the older kids. And, it makes all the sense to me to start this with the youngest so that they go through their public school experience with this background, so that when they get to high school, it's second nature for them to be able to do that hands-on exploratory work. And I work with, it's my life with littles all day, and they're made for this. Kids are made for this kind of work, so.
I would say we had our March 9th professional learning just this past week, and my favorite sessions, I think, were those related to this topic. And our partner in the work, Elizabeth Aschenbrenner, said, I've never met a toddler or an early childhood young learner that couldn't tell you all the names of the dinosaurs, for example. And her point was oral language development, and when we're engaging children in play and what their passions are, just how much we can really support advanced vocabulary development and critical thinking and problem solving. So it really is quite magical.
Thanks. Ms. McDonough Souza?
Thank you. I'll echo my colleagues and say thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. You mentioned in passing specials, which my understanding refers to art, music, gym. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. How will that, I don't know if this is too premature, but do you think that will continue on as we are revamping this intentional play curriculum, or will things like that kind of get rolled into this curriculum, or I don't know if that is more.
I believe that they will stay. My goal is that we work as a team. So the art teachers and music teachers are working with the classroom teachers in whatever their scenario or their study is, and we integrate it all together so that what you're doing in music is reflected in the classroom and vice versa. Because that's how kids don't learn in silos, they learn all at once. They take everything in, and that's what we need to do, is get them excited in all aspects and show them how life totally integrates. So that's how I see it happening. I mean, I think of when, Miss Laslett was showing you the gas pump, right, that she made, and the cars. That could be happening in art class too, where they're building together. The idea, we had been brainstorming about her racetrack. We now have 3D printers in schools that they can start to make their own cars, design them, and then make them, and then use them. So there's nothing that can stop us in our thoughts. We're just getting started. So this is how good it is just getting started. Think about how good it's going to be in a year or two.
And we've definitely recognized that our youngest learners are artists and musicians in their own right. So we'll make sure to continue to enhance opportunities. I think really what Ms. Gaffney is saying is find opportunities to integrate, just like the standards for literacy mathematics. I mean, think about the math that's involved in a gas station, right? Like, prices and what's on the pump. So the point is, I think, to really integrate all of those experiences across the day for our young people.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other board members with questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Possibly two things to look forward to for board members. We are going to try to open up our classrooms now that we're opening up, and give you an opportunity to come and play if you'd like. but more importantly, observe this in action. And I do hear some rumoring that we may actually want to highlight a preschool or kindergarten class during HQI week in July. So that intentional play may actually be the focus of HQI for some of our adult learners. So imagine some high school AP teachers seeing HQI happening with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So I've heard that rumoring amongst the teaching and learning department. So that may be something that we all see as well. So Ms. Glennon, with your permission, we'll move on.
Yes, please.
And I want to thank our staff who have joined us for a fantastic sharing of practice. Thank you, administrators and teachers. You have an early morning, so unless you want to hear all about policy, there's nothing intentionally functioning or playful about that.
Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. So, Ms. Glennon and board members, we ask for action to be taken on 5 specific policies this evening. We should take them one by one, Ms. Glennon?
Yes, we should.
So, food service charging 3542.43.
We can go through, at least for this one, because I think this policy had minimal changes. Do you have a motion? Do you have the motion, Mr. Fowler?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 3542.43, food service charging, as presented by the administration.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Second by Ms. Ratner. Do we have any discussion? I think there was one change that we had requested that was made in the policy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Next policy, 5144.2, use of exclusionary timeout settings. We always appreciate the dialogue with board members around policy. So I bring your attention to the separate handout on your desk that has red and purple, I think, text. And I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Brown because we did reconfigure this for ease of understanding. So let's see if we got it right this time. Mr. Brown?
Good evening, everyone. We have made some revisions to the layout of the policy compared to when we met earlier in the month. And what we've done is made a clarification that the way timeout is used as an intervention will vary a bit between how it's implemented for students with special education services compared to students who are receiving a regular education program. So what we did on page 1, well, first that's noted at the with the last sentence in the first paragraph, and then we go further to break out the introduction with a paragraph focused on students receiving special education services, and then a separate paragraph for students not receiving special education services. The key piece for students receiving special education services is that the behavioral intervention plan is part of the student's IEP, or individualized education program, and that BIP, or behavior intervention plan, is developed in collaboration with the parents who are part of the PPT, the planning and placement team. So that's all incorporated there. And then if we go down to the next paragraph, students not receiving special education services, it's noted that the intervention or behavioral management plan is part of good classroom management that can happen in any regular education classroom, where a teacher sees fit to have a timeout space that can be helpful to students to regulate their behavior and their emotions during the course of a classroom lesson. I could stop there to see if there's any questions about those introductory paragraphs.
Ms. Wolf-Boynton.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. So I just want to, with the second paragraph, students not, or the second section, students not receiving special education services, I think one of the things that we had talked about last meeting is the possibility that there would be incidents with students who would need to be removed from the classroom and go into a timeout setting, who because of the incident that was happening, there wouldn't be time for parent involvement, right? There wouldn't be time for a plan to be developed. There would be an incident and a child would have to be taken out of the classroom. And it seemed that we were all in agreement that that was a possibility and that something should be covered in this. I'm just not 100% convinced that I see that in this second section. It still sounds to me as if there is going to be a plan in place and there isn't always going to be a plan in place.
Did you want to read the last sentence of that third paragraph that starts, there may be rare occasions where it is necessary to? Does that cover it?
It does cover it, but the language earlier in that paragraph still makes it sound to me like we're talking about special education kids and those who have an IEP or some kind of behavioral plan in place. That's my 2 cents.
Could I just add to that? His point, well, if you look at the heading of that, I see your point. But if you look at the heading above it in italics, does that help at all?
I do see the heading.
Yeah.
I do see the heading very clearly, but perhaps, so I guess my question is, do students who are not receiving special education services have a behavioral management plan in place?
Not individually. For the whole class. So in a classroom, it's a given second grade class, a teacher will have a plan on how to manage that classroom. And there are all different kinds of systems. Reward systems, systems that put children or classes on warning. There are areas in the room like a calming station. And that's usually communicated at open house or parent conferences. So that's a plan that is generic to a class, not that individual child, unless it becomes then through behaviors necessary to develop an individual plan. But this paragraph is just generically for the class. Is that correct, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Okay, so not to be nitpicky, but am being nitpicky. So, that second sentence says, students, not a classroom, students who can benefit from time out in their classroom will have a behavior management plan developed. So the way I read this paragraph, we're still talking about students having behavioral management plans.
Individually.
Individually. That's what that sentence says to me.
So what we would do, and this is similar to what we do for a student who's struggling with reading or a student who's struggling with math. Well, let's back up a step. For all students, we teach them reading and we teach them math. Some students struggle with reading and math. They don't get a special education plan, but they get extra support to learn reading skills and to learn math skills. And that supportive plan is laid out for an individual student. We do the same thing for students with their emotional skills and their behavioral development. We have a classroom-wide plan. That plan is in place for all the students in the classroom, but there are some students who need more support. And if a student needs more support, just like we would do for reading or math, we would talk with the parent or guardian and we'd say, here's what we're doing to support reading and math. We do the same thing to say, here's what we're doing to support your child's behavioral development or emotional regulation development. And that's where the word behavior management plan comes into place, just like a reading intervention plan or a math intervention plan.
But one of these students is not considered a special education student.
Correct, just like a student who needs a little bit more reading support might not be a special education student, or who needs more math support. It's similar process, but for emotion and behavior, which is equally important to reading a math skill.
Okay. I'm still not convinced about the paragraph, but I appreciate that information.
So, Ms., we're open to revision. What do you suggest we do with that second sentence?
So I would say something along the lines, students Students who need extra behavioral guidance but are not special education students, you know, may need, you know, or may have a behavioral plan in place. I just think that I don't know, honestly, I write better with my fingers than with my mouth. But I just think to me, it is unclear, and it still sounds like we're talking about special education students. And I understand that there's a difference between policies and parental manuals and guidelines, but I still think that a parent should be able to read a policy and know specifically whether their child is included in it or not.
So if I could just interject, as Ms. Ratner pointed out, there is a heading in front of this paragraph that specifically says it relates to students not receiving special ed services. So that should remove the question. And the sentence that was just pointed out, students who can benefit from time out in their classroom will have a behavior management plan developed. According to acceptable classroom practices, to me, it addresses that concern that you just raised. I mean, it basically says, to me, it says something very similar to what you were just stating. But if I could hear from other board members on this specific paragraph, whether others feel that there's still confusion. Mr. DeYoung, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. No, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I think the heading makes it very clear. And I think it's probably practice right now, right? I mean,
It is.
Yeah. So I would not support a change.
I think every parent expects that there is a plan for each room, and when a kiddo is not following rules, that there are ways to redirect and reinforce other behaviors, and that's the spirit of this. And if you are having difficulty with that, then we're going to customize this plan for you.
Right, and I will say, just from practical experience, it's very well specified by each classroom teacher at each level, like you said, at open house generally.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that, I know we have a need for the policy, but I'm not sure a parent would even have a need to look at this, because I think it's very clearly articulated generally by the teacher.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I understand where Ms. Boynton is going, but I also agree with Mr. DeYoung. My only suggestion is maybe add a sentence of a classroom teacher will have a behavior management plan for the entire classroom. Specific students who can benefit from time out in their classroom will have a behavior management plan, like a reading assistance plan or like a student who needs help with reading. And so it gives that comparison where it is there, developed according to acceptable management practices.
So am I hearing you suggest that we add the sentence as simple, a new sentence number 2 that reads, teachers will have general behavior management plans for students?
Yes. Yes, and then it can say specific students who can benefit from time out in their classroom will have a behavior management plan. And you can leave it as simple as that. I think that clarifies things a little bit.
Would make me feel much better.
So an insertion of a new sentence number 2.
Any other comments on this particular paragraph? And any issues with the paragraph that precedes it, students receiving special education services? Everybody okay with that paragraph? Okay.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Okay. The next page or so is lists some definitions that did not change since our last reading, through the types of time out. And then if we get down to the heading, use of exclusionary timeout, setting and space, we have some minor changes there. Notably, the second paragraph under that heading is inserted, which again specifies that there are differences in how we put this policy in place for students with special education services compared to students without. We go on to page 3, where we head that page with the heading Students Receiving Special Education Services, and we go on to delineate 3 items of how students with disabilities who have IEPs will have exclusionary timeout implemented. One of the key pieces in this section indicates that students with IEPs sometimes need to have a separate space, a separate room where they go accompanied by adult staff so that they can be separate from their classroom and have a greater opportunity to regulate their emotions and their behavior. Again, this is done in a supportive way under close observation of the adult staff who know that student best. It also limits any embarrassment that a young child might have or a student might have if they're having trouble regulating their emotions in front of all their classmates. So it does provide some privacy and some dignity in a situation that sometimes can be quite difficult for a youngster.
Any questions on these items 1 through 3? Ms. McDonough-Souza?
Thank you. This might be nitpicky as well, but on the bottom of page 2, that last heading, so it's just the same heading as the initial heading on page 1, and so I would just suggest that we change up one or the other, just because when I first looked at this, I said, wait, are we saying the exact same thing? Is this like a copy and paste error? And then I was like, oh no, I think it says something different than page 1. So I would just, my suggestion would be changing one or the other of those headings, because it's a little confusing.
If I could suggest, since we have a title of the policy is use of exclusionary timeout, says settings. I don't know if you want to change that to spaces. That's one point that I have, just a housekeeping item, but I'll bring it up later. I would suggest striking, if it's feasible, striking the title at the very beginning and just go right into saying the Milford Board of Education acknowledges, and leaving the title on page 2. That would be my suggestion. Anybody object to that?
Can I ask another?
Sure, yep.
So is there a reason why we're not just condensing and combining the subheading students receiving special education services and students not receiving special education services on page 1 and just putting them under the requisite headings and the same headings under page 3 and page 4 and just combining them? It just seems unnecessarily confusing when you first read it, even though when you go deeper into it, I know that, I don't know, it just seems like we can make that more readable.
I think it's just by convention that a policy generally has an introduction followed by the definitions, and so we were following the convention of other policies. We can surely make an adjustment if that's the preference, but that was the only reasoning behind it.
Okay.
Convention.
And I understand the first intro paragraph, but I mean, that would be my suggestion, is that we take the 2 subsections of that intro paragraph and add them to the appropriate sections on pages 3 and 4, if that's possible.
Do you see any problem with that, Dr. Kutaya?
Not at first glance, but I'm getting the sense we're taking this back, so I would want some time to think I don't think it changes anything, but.
Okay.
So we're good with that.
You're good with that, or you want to be able to think about it at a third reading, with a third reading?
Let's see what else you guys have.
Okay.
Because we want to talk about settings and spaces.
Right. So I think we might be on page 4 at this point.
Yes. So there's just some clear, we did some minor revisions just for brevity and flow at the top of page 4 that is there in red. And then at the bottom of page 4, we just moved a paragraph from the earlier version, that a paragraph that begins, the school district shall inform. That's not a change in language, but we moved where that paragraph was located, but it stays the same. And then for students not receiving special education services, there on page 4, the purpose of this paragraph was to clarify that a timeout space can be in a regular education classroom. It's used as a proactive strategy, typically, as we have there, referred to as a calming corner or a Zen den or something to that effect. And to contrast that with a timeout room, which was clear, had some specifics in those 3 bullets on the prior page around what we do for students with specialized programs and IEPs. And a piece there that parents will be notified when timeout is used. And moving on to the 5th page, there's no new language there in those top 2 paragraphs under headed by for all students. That was moving some paragraphs around for clarity. And then the things that you see that are stricken there are paragraphs that were taken and moved to different spots from what you saw last time.
So I have a question. The last paragraph on page 4, I just want to make sure. Additionally, parents and guardians will be notified if their child has used a timeout setting during the school day. That relates to students not receiving special ed services.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Other questions? Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Just one, just grammar note. I'm going to do my best, Warren Pulowski. There's two widths on top of page 3. It says for at a minimum for those students with disabilities. That's just my only little comment. So.
Brennan.
I'd also just have a clarification on the students not receiving the special education services, so their timeout setting will always be in the classroom?
Yeah, as we noted, there could be a rare occasion where a student may need to leave the classroom if their behavior becomes disruptive in an unanticipated way for a student without a disability. And again, that is a twofold. One, so that the rest of his or her classmates don't see him or her out of control, which could be embarrassing, and also to get to a place where staff can speak more privately and directly with the student to help him or her maintain their behavior and emotional regulation.
So are you saying then that last sentence in that first paragraph means that they'll be removed from the classroom?
There's always a potential for that, so we wanted to make it clear that that is an option. I could tell you that rarely happens, but there are unanticipated situations that arise.
Right, but I'm not sure I get that meaning out of that sentence.
It uses the word exclusionary timeout, which if you look at the definition, that's what the definition of an exclusionary timeout is.
Oh, okay.
To remove them from the classroom.
Right, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Mulrennan, that is exactly, if I may, Ms. Glennon, the reason why we went in the direction of using 2 words that were different, and maybe we're not consistent enough throughout the policy, but we wanted to make it more clear that students without special ed services it's really about a setting, like the Common Corner, and students with special needs, there is a space actually to go and engage in timeout. So that's our practice, that's our philosophy, on not excluding students from a classroom to send them away from the room, that it is more of a setting inside the classroom. So that's why you see our shift to moving to 2 different words in the policy rather than one consistent word. And I don't know if it was, it may be a little clumsy. You guys could tell us as third-party readers, but setting, it mostly applies to students without IEPs, and space should apply with students with IEPs. And in that rare occasion that you bring up, Ms. Mulrennan, there potentially is a space for students without IEPs to go and do that. Okay?
So I wonder if that should be specified in the policy then, because it's not, to me, I was reading this and noticed that there were many areas where, you started out saying settings / spaces, and then one of them had been stricken. They seemed to, mostly settings had been stricken in favor of spaces. So it wasn't clear, to me, I was thinking there was a term that was more appropriate to be using, more of an appropriate word, settings versus spaces.
We can review that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so the title also just says settings, so you have to decide if, should it be settings / spaces or whatever's the right one.
Oh, in the subject. Okay.
Do we have other comments on this policy? I'm thinking that the policy will have to come back for a third reading. Ms. Wolf-Boynton?
I have a question about the last paragraph on the bottom of page 4. It says, minimally, whenever a timeout setting is used as an emergency intervention, the parent guardian shall be notified of the emergency intervention. Such notification will be provided the same day whenever possible. I'm just wondering, is there ever a scenario where we don't provide it the same day? That we would need that disclaimer whenever possible?
The only time would be is if a parent didn't answer a phone or return a phone call or respond to an email.
Okay, so it's the whenever possible is not on us being the communicators,
Yeah.
it's on them being the receivers?
We'll make the contact, but there are occasions where someone can't get back before staff is gone.
All set?
Yes, I'm all
Ms.
set.
Doyle?
Thank you. I have 2 comments. First is on that same paragraph. I think it might be helpful to add a clarifying portion on the first sentence. Additionally, parents will be notified if their child has used a timeout setting during the school day, whether or not they have a specialized behavior management plan, because I think it seems that students who can have an IEP, students who don't have an IEP, students who have a behavior management plan, and then students who are not in any of those buckets can use it. I don't know how anyone feels about that. I feel like clarifies things a little bit.
I had asked earlier if that paragraph relates to students not receiving special ed services, so.
I know it's not receiving special ed services, but it could be a student that has a behavior management plan, which is a non-IEP student, or it can be a student who doesn't have a behavior management plan.
My understanding is that it could apply to either case, correct?
The notification, is that the question?
About, yes, notification.
Yeah, we are required by regulation for a student with an IEP to notify the parent if a timeout space is used.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my second comment comes off of Ms. Why did I just miss Sousa's comment? Sorry. I'm like, Emily, what's...
Ms. Glennon, me?
The last comment is, I think that in terms of reordering, for all students, that bottom section should come first, because that starts the main silo, and then it comes into the 2 buckets of students with IEPs and then students not receiving special education services, and then it would be clarified from there.
I don't know if I agree with that, because only because of the subject matter. So the first sentence the first section talks about the training and then the, I think the second section, if, correct me if I'm wrong, relates to more like the administrative regulation. And those are very generic pieces of policy and regulation. So I think putting them at the beginning will be very awkward. Starting with that, I think starting with the meat of the topic of the policy is more appropriate. I don't know how others feel. Because there's also at the bottom two very small. You have to remember that that whole middle section is not going to be there. So there's there's two small, just one sentence each at the bottom that will be part of that as well.
I just feel that if you would want to know who's responsible for this policy at the beginning of setting it out and going from there and establishing it, because it comes into that lead-in paragraph from there. But this is not the end of the world. Don't care that much.
Are there other feedback on that from anyone? We might suggest then that administration do what they feel is best when they reread this and think about it.
Yep, we'll reorder it and see what, as far as flow goes, how it feels right.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Okay.
And we'll choose another color to add to the font format here, so we get super festive next time we meet.
Could I suggest it might be helpful to also have a clean copy?
I was thinking the same, Ms. Glennon.
Okay.
So a marked up copy, and then for ease on your eyes, a clean one. All right, Ms. Griffin, you can note that, please. All right, so we're going to not vote on this and wait another turn. Let's move to National Honor Society. Is that okay, Ms. Glennon?
Yes. Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
I do. Motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 6145.51, National Honor Society, as presented by administration.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Ms. Ratner seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We ask the board to rescind policy 5145.5 on exploitation and sexual harassment.
Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
Yep. I do. Motion that the Milford Board of Education rescinds Board Policy 5145.5, exploitation/sexual harassment.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And finally, we ask the board to rescind activity funds management 6145.8.
Mr. Fowler?
I motion that the Milford Board of Education rescinds Board Policy 6145.8, activity funds management.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Ms. Capasna's Human Resources Report.
Thank you. You have the monthly report, which lists the job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I wanted to point out a couple things. This month we have the high school spring sports coaching stipends attached. Hopefully you have both high schools there. And I did want to mention we are up to 10 teacher retirements, 3 of whom have already left us mid-year, and 7 of whom are scheduled to retire at the end of June. And also, some good news I wanted to point out. In the report, you see that we have 11 substitute teachers hired this month. So we do believe things are turning around, and we're on a roll with hiring more substitutes for this district, which is great news.
Questions for Ms. Capasna? So you feel that you're starting to see some easing of the problems that we've had with hiring in general. Although we do still have, I don't remember, do we have classroom teachers?
I don't believe we're looking for, well, we might be looking. Do we have any
Just long-term, yep, okay. Long-term subs.
Yeah, mostly long-term subs. We do feel, that things are turning around both in terms of people wanting to return to work, but also obviously the numbers are going down. We're seeing a lot less staff members out with COVID, et cetera. So a combination of a lot of things seem to be helping.
Okay, and the number of 10 retirements seems to have held steady over the past few months.
Yes, definitely.
Is this, is that the number 10 at this point? Is that is that about where we're normally at, or high, low?
I think it's fairly typical. It might typically be a tiny bit less. It's not the end of a contract year. That would be this time next year. So we're hoping to have the average come through. It's hard to say.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
We turn things over to Mr. Viccitelli for the disbursement report.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. In your package is a listing of all of the disbursements, over the amount of $1,500 for the month of February, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Mr. Riccitelli, it's on page 24 of 32. Eagle Leasing Company.
Yes.
It's the trailers, I believe, right?
It is.
With the easing of the COVID restrictions, will that be a charge? What's the expectation of what we're going to do with those trailers and the furniture in it?
For the most part, we're going to finish the end of this year with the furniture that's currently in place. Our plan is to go through those trailers systematically between now and throughout the summer to find out what equipment, what furniture and things are in there that are still usable, inventory, things like that, and then go from there. We do know that there's going to be many things that are currently in the schools, like thousands of desks that we had to purchase that now will have to go into storage. So there's going to be a flopping, but of course we're going to have a lot less of the trailers than we do now.
So the trailers will stick around for the rest of the school year? That's your anticipation?
Yes.
Have they, just a strange curiosity, have they been opened since?
Oh, yes.
March of 2020?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've at the beginning of each school year, we've gone through and put certain things in, and then throughout the course of, throughout the course of this pandemic, we've been in there to do certain things, pull certain things out.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
It will be a happy day when they pull away from our schools.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
On public record to mention why we have thousands of desks, in case you haven't been paying attention for 2 years. So we had to socially distance 6 feet 2 years ago, 3 feet this year. So that meant we had to remove all tables, particularly elementary schools, where we grouped kids together at a common table. No longer were we able to seat kids in cafeterias. So everyone had to eat separately. So we had to, if this board of course recalls, but for a matter of public record, we had to socially distance every space. Then that meant taking away tables. And we invested in the least expensive desks we could find that would last for a couple of years during the pandemic. But they are still our asset. And we need to make a decision now post-pandemic, which we don't have any answer to. So what do we do with this asset of multiple desks? So I just wanted to say for the record why we have this now overflow of desks.
Can we just talk for a minute about the furniture that is currently in the trailers and has been in the trailers for a couple of years? So, I'm assuming that some of it might just need to be cleaned up, right? And something like that we will continue to use. We'll clean it up and bring it back into the schools. Certainly if anything has, rusted or something like that would be dangerous to be using, I expect it will be disposed of. in some fashion or sold, sold for
Yes.
metal or whatever, but
Yes, we'll go through everything. Anything that we can salvage, of course, we're going to. If it can be cleaned up and put back into the classrooms, we're certainly going to do that. That's our goal. It's also our goal to come up with a more standardized classroom. In the past, just because of years and years and years of collecting, that there are things that probably didn't belong in the classrooms that crept in. So we're looking at more of a standardized classroom. As far as the furniture goes, there's still, of course, creativity on the part of the teacher that will, he or she will design their classroom the way that they want to, but pretty much standardize the furniture as much as we can.
okay. And then in terms of the desks, what I'm hearing you say is that you're not going to just put them in the trailers and leave them there until we need them again. You're going to come up with a plan as to what to do with them?
Yes, correct.
Which may include selling them if we don't feel we need them, or?
We just haven't had time to discuss it, to be honest, Ms. Glennon. We are still trying to figure out how to bring cafeteria tables back into our cafeterias very, very quickly, which don't even live on our Milford campus right now, right? So we will have an answer for the board. We just are not there yet.
So were the elementary school tables taken out of the, or are you talking about high school
Mostly
tables?
high school.
Okay. And we, am I correct that we really do not have any dedicated storage space for Milford Public Schools other than, do we still have the space over at Simon Lake?
We do, yes. It's full to the brim.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions from board? Ms. Wolf-Boynton.
Mr. Riccitelli, on page 24, I'm curious about the T-Mobile, the hotspots related to COVID. Are they something that are going to disappear, or are we keeping them because we're now so tech reliant, or?
We're definitely keeping the hotspots, yeah.
Okay.
We never know when we're going to need them again. So.
There have been some grant monies to help with that in the past, but we believe that our community will still need that. Our community as well as our schools.
Ms. Doyle, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I know we've seen these on the sheets before, but can you just explain the process of the Medicare reimbursement just for my own knowledge?
Are you referring to the reimbursement for retirees?
Yes.
That's okay.
He's trying to get rid of the question. I saw that.
I apologize. Sure. Under the contracts with our different unions, we're responsible for certain reimbursements. All of our employees, when they retire, go into some form of Medicaid when they reach the age of 65. But then by contract, we have to pay for certain supplements, and that's what those are for.
How long do those generally last per an individual?
Until the person expires. I'm sorry to say it that way, but yes, for lifetime.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Do we have other questions? Okay, I see none.
That's the completion of the superintendent's report, Ms. Glennon.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Mr. Fowler, we go on to consent agenda. Do you have a motion?
I do. A motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda items, consideration of minutes, February 14th, 2022 business meeting, and February 28th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Ms. Ratner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board comment. Do we have any members of the board wishing to make board comment this evening? Ms. Ratner.
I think it's exciting about the NIC, the Network of Improvement Community, and I also am awed by all our students at the high school with these accolades of academic and sports athletic prowess, i.e. the female winners, Kelly S. Ferris, first in history for wrestling, and even coming in 5th at law, Marissa Wargo. Wow, it's really cool. As well as academically with the app, and we all know about that. They were even on the news, NBC. Leah Maria Dantes and Violet Wilson from Foreign with a Congressional App Challenge winning that. I'm so proud of Milford. It's good.
I would agree with you, Ms. Ratner. It is very exciting to see our students having those kinds of successes.
Other comments from board members? Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. I just want to extend my condolences personally to Mr. Hardiman. I served with him for several years on the Permanent School Facilities Committee, and I just want to personally extend my condolences. It was an honor serving with him.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, Mr. Fowler.
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second it.
If there's no objection to adjourning, we're adjourned at 8:43. Thank you.